On tonight's edition of The Best Times, we meet people who are searching for and finding second careers. We discuss the importance of friendships as we age, and you'll get important information to help you protect your hearing. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. How many times have you gone to a social event, you meet someone new, and the first question they ask is, what do you do? Our jobs, our careers define us. But what happens when the job ends? When your 30-year career comes to a screeching halt? Even though the unemployment rate for workers 55 plus is lower than the overall national unemployment numbers, finding a job or a new career when you're over 50 can be a challenge. Tonight on The Best Times, we meet people who are taking on that challenge and finding second careers. Mark Scatamaccia is looking for a job. A 56-year-old middle manager in the food service industry, Mark didn't expect to be job hunting at his age.
I feel like I'm in solitary confinement. I need measurable goals. I need to see that I'm making a difference. I need to participate. That's what I've always felt I needed.
When you lose a job and your income is stopped, that's a very scary thing for anybody any age.
Betty McWillie is a career counselor, and Mark is one of her clients.
The career counselor is basically someone that offers self-assessment, career exploration, career planning, which is resume, interviewing, target cover letters, job search strategies, placement, and follow-up. So it's a fluid model.
My career counselor has been almost like my therapist. She's the one that keeps me going, and it's been the best thing I could have ever done, because there are days I don't feel like I can do it myself. And she said, and explained to me, Mark, that these are what you're going through, and it's not unusual. It's situational depression. It's tough. I can't change my age, but I have to look past it and look at the positives of that. So you have to keep that positive attitude. It's crucial.
The statistics on unemployment and the over 50 job market present a mix of good and bad news. The unemployment rate for 55 plus workers stands at about 4%, which is lower than the nearly 6% rate for the total population. But it's harder for older workers to find that next job. It takes an average of over a year for the 55-plus job seeker to find work. That's more than 5 months longer than the younger workers. And nearly half of those who do find new jobs are working for less money. Betty McWillie sees an improving job market for the over 50 worker, but she also pushes her clients to seek second careers.
The first goal, though, is primarily to see what other careers they can pursue to get hired and to get a job.
Looking at Mike Potter, you wouldn't guess that he spent most of his life as a lawyer. Today, at age 67, Mike is in the chaplaincy training program at the VA hospital.
I was at the top of my profession. I wasn't moving away from anything, but I just felt like there was something more for me, that God had something for me to do more than what I was doing.
His journey to this new career came about as a result of his time spent as a hospice volunteer and his own bout with a life-threatening illness.
And I was spending probably 80 to 90% of my time in front of a computer drafting documents and designing plans and running numbers and doing all that kind of thing. And I really missed and really yearned for a chance to work with people one-on-one. As I'm able to connect with a veteran here in the hospital, for example, and kind of meet him right where he is, and not try to pull him anywhere or the other, but just walk with him along this journey that he's on, which is often very scary for him. But to know and have the confidence that it's going to be all right. Maybe not physically all right, but wherever they are, I can walk with them and offer some comfort and support.
Mike's career change is an example of what Betty McWillie identifies as the older worker who is seeking personal fulfillment in a second career.
We don't work for money. We really work for personal fulfillment. But my feeling is when you're really doing what you love and what your abilities are and you enjoy it, that you find ways to make money.
Brad Ross's first career was underwater, on board a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, followed by a stint on a nuclear aircraft carrier. Since his discharge, he's been working as a consultant with a defense contractor. But at age 51, he's carefully planned for his second career.
You have to develop a career plan. You have to figure out where you want to go. You have to look at what the steps are in between to get to that career plan. And that's what we started navigating. I set one career plan that would say, if I want to try my own contracting, I can do that. But really the long-term goal is to get into retirement where I can have kind of my own hours and do adjunct professor work and really enjoy life, but not just, stop. I want to keep working until my body says it's time to stop.
Brad took Betty McWillie's advice and went back to school to earn his master's degree.
You go to a class, you see other people, there's all kinds of good, training for computer skills or all kinds of things. But to take something to improve your marketability, where we look at your goal and we see here's some areas that you really might need to elaborate on and improve, and then make some strategies and research where they can go to get that training.
Brad has been teaching at Webster University and Lemoyne-Owen College, and he offers this advice to others his age.
I think the true message is, don't be afraid to go back to school, and don't be afraid to learn. But when you do that, find something that interests you in life, especially if you're approaching retirement. That's a good time to say, I've done this, and if you love it, keep going. But if you're ready to do something different, don't be afraid to set a course, plan it out, and then figure out what education supports that.
Whether you're looking for a second career or simply trying to find work, Betty McWillie has a few pointers for the over 50 job seeker. First, tailor your resume to the job you're applying for. Don't include job history that isn't relative to a potential employer. 2. Network. Don't hesitate to contact friends, family, and former coworkers in your job search. 3. Use social media. LinkedIn has become a go-to website for job placement. 4. Don't hesitate to go back to school or seek higher accreditation in your field. Today's job market demands that you be tech savvy, so improve your computer skills if needed. And 5. Develop a career plan and market yourself. If you need help developing your plan, consider hiring a career counselor. Mark Scatamaccia has one final bit of advice.
It's not in the old days of banging out a resume, and there are a lot of different ways to get, you've got a lot of competition. Get somebody to help you craft your brand.
Of all possessions, a friend is the most precious. Those are the words of Greek historian Herodotus, and the sentiment he expressed in those words is as true today as it was when he wrote them in the 5th century BC. Friends are important throughout our lives, but as we age, do they take on greater importance? Studies have shown that having a network of friends as we age can be as beneficial to our health and well-being as any physical exercise. It seems it's comforting to know that you've got a friend. How important are friendships to you and why?
Well, they're super important. That is our support group.
I spend most of my time with my friends.
The older I get, the more important they are.
Friendship is real and important. You can't go through this world without friendship.
The older I get, the more lasting friendships I enjoy.
All right. Do you find that it's harder now to make friends that you're getting older?
No, much easier.
Oh no, it's easier. Really. It really is. I've got a lot more to talk about now.
When I was younger, I was shy. So it was harder then than it is now.
People seem to be more outgoing at my age for some reason.
Do you find that it's harder for you to make friends as you age?
Yes.
Why?
I'm not out as much the older I've got.
That's the reason why I'm at this expo today, to mingle and mix with people.
And I think as we age, it's harder to find friends. Oftentimes our connections come through our children. So I think it's so important to belong to a senior center or clubs or a church group, whatever it takes to connect with other people. I think it's vital.
And I bet you don't have trouble making friends, do you?
Oh no, I got the gift for gab. Most women do.
When I went to the Senior Expo and we recorded those comments, we talked to a lot of people and got a lot of answers, but I will say that to a person, on that first question, everybody said that friendships, oh, they're very important, very important. And I'm sure all of you would say the same thing. But here's my question to you. We know they're very important, but how important are they? Are friendships more important in your 70s and 80s versus your 20s or 30s?
Friendships are important at any age, but I think as you get older, they become incredibly important. And one of the reasons is because we need to be able to communicate with somebody who's a peer, somebody who understands what we're talking about when we say things that happened a while back. We need that.
Basically, the conversations are much more in depth and non-threatening because as we age, we get very honest. We don't have to worry about what other people might think.
Now, why is that?
We don't have to satisfy a boss. We're very independent as we get older. And we have our views, so we respect each other's views.
Well, let's talk about that in the second question that I asked them. I asked them, you know, is it harder to make friends now that you're older versus when you were younger? And that was a mixed bag of answers on that. So I'll ask all of you, is it harder to make friends as you age?
I don't think it is. It just depends on where you're going. You know, where you have the opportunities to make new friends. You know, I think in your faith community, it's very easy. Your neighborhood, probably easy. Some of your social friends that you used to see just a little bit, now you see more often because they're retired too.
But it could be harder, could it not? Because we've lost those connections that we had at work, the connections that the one woman mentioned, her children, finding friends through the parents of children. I mean, you reach a retirement age and suddenly you've lost all of that normal contact. So don't you have to work harder?
Well, I think that's a great point. I think any friendship requires work. And I like to use my late mother-in-law as a great example. She was in her 70s when she passed, and at her funeral there were probably 700 or 800 people. And the pastor said, if you've received a note from June Bailey in your lifetime, raise your hand. And I think everybody in the whole place raised their hand. She wrote handwritten notes. And you know, in this day with emails and Twitter and all that sort of communication, taking the time to work on friendship with a handwritten note means so much. So just like at any age, friendship does take work, and it doesn't change when you get older.
You know, the one gentleman said that he found it easier to make friends because, for some reason, he said people were more outgoing as they age. Do you find that to be true?
I think so. I think we lose some of, as Bob said earlier, I think we lose some of our inhibitions as we get older. Our defense mechanisms are a little different, and I think we value people in some ways more because we've learned through the years how to value, and we didn't have that at the very beginning.
I think we recognize as you get older that time is marching on, and it's important to be much more accepting of people. And I think that's one of the reasons we get so many friends as we get older.
And you don't get caught up in all the little things, you know, that to worry about when you get older. You know,
Like what? What would be specific?
People have their views, and you can laugh about some of the views, and you come back with your own funny view on something, but you don't make a judgment on the person, what kind of person they are. You know, it's a more honest relationship, I think, when you get older.
You're more open to be outgoing.
To changes.
Perhaps that's
And
it.
it's okay to be a curmudgeon.
It's okay.
Yeah,
he has a great excuse, doesn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think we don't, as we age, we are probably more set in our ways, and we're less susceptible to peer pressure. You know, I've got 3 teenage daughters, and I'm sure that many of their friends now will be friends for lives, but I'm sure that a lot of them won't be, that they'll make additional friends over their lifetime, but friends that will have more in common with them from a deeper side, maybe even from a spiritual side. So I think friends as you age become increasingly important and more like you. I think you hang around people that are most like you.
In working with seniors, when we have a senior that is at home and isolated, even with a caregiver, it might be better for them to be in assisted living because they're totally isolated away from people. And it's amazing how many families, their loved ones flourish by going into a living facility that they choose, and they see what's going on with the activities, and there's staff there that are trained to bring people together.
You know, scientists tell us that loneliness in old age is a health hazard. I mean, a physical hazard to lead to depression, you know, heart problems, all sorts of higher blood pressure, all sorts of issues. I'm curious to see if you've seen that in your work.
I definitely have seen it. When you have 2 people with dementia getting together, they get to be friends. They don't know each other's name, and this conversation doesn't necessarily go with this conversation, but they know that they're socializing, and they have big smiles on their face, and they miss each other.
Do you think that, you mentioned it's a social interaction, is it friendship by the definition we know?
I think it is a friendship because they depend on talking to each other. They depend on sharing, just maybe not understanding what they're sharing.
Not sharing the same way that we would interpret sharing, yeah.
But it's filling that gap, and I think that's what you're saying. You know, whatever that gap is in your life, you fill it with a friend. So whatever definition of friendship is, I think it's more importantly as you get older, the filling of that gap.
Let's talk about the boomer generation a second, because I think, well, I'm curious to know, do you think the friendship equation with boomers is going to be different as they age versus parents and grandparents?
I think you'll be able to see that they can stay connected even if they are not physically in the same, you know,
social
place.
media?
Yeah, social media.
How important do you think that's going to be in the future?
Extremely important.
Really?
Well, you take your cell phone, and it doesn't cost you anything to make a long distance phone call.
True.
You can talk to anybody anywhere in the world.
But now you've got Facebook friends and real friends. I mean, are the Facebook friends just as valuable?
I think so because of what Ken just said a moment ago about his mother-in-law, and that is that handwritten note was huge. It was unique to her, and it was huge. Well, in the same way, I think with Facebook you have to write, and sometimes we're a little bit bolder about what we write, even if we think other people can see it. It sort of lends itself to our personality. So I think that connectiveness is important.
Yeah, let me give you a great example of that. Today happens to be my birthday.
And Happy birthday!
No gifts, please.
Don't worry
I do
about
like
that.
socks and underwear. I have 35 emails that I noticed I had when I came in here, and I haven't looked at them yet, but I can't wait to have time during the day to see who wished me happy birthday on Facebook. Yeah. It's just that, it's the way we communicate now so often is social media. And I won't reply to them all because it would take a lot of time. But also I will send out a general reply and thank everybody for their happy birthday wishes. So social media is very important now, and particularly to boomers. I think it will continue to be.
Well, it could be an interesting future for all of us as we age and as we make and find friends. I'm going to close out with that quote from the famous philosophers and poets Lennon and McCartney, who said, "I get by with a little help from my friends." Thank you all for being on The Best Times.
Thank you for having us.
Hearing loss is the third most common health problem in the United States. 50 million Americans have some form of hearing loss. And age is a factor. Half of those over 75 have some degree of hearing loss. How good are your ears? And how can you protect your hearing? How do you diagnose hearing loss?
The first thing I want to do is I want to take a look in their ears to make sure it's not just wax. Because although it's rare, sometimes the patient's ears are full of wax. We call that otoscopy. After that, we want to assess the status of the middle ear. So we do a test to make sure the eardrum is moving how it should be moving. There's no fluid behind the eardrum that would cause the hearing structure not to work correctly. That's called tympanometry. After that, we move into a sound booth and we do a full assessment of the hearing. Everything from hearing beeping tones to determine what's called thresholds, and that's the level where the patient can just barely hear a certain tone, to speech understanding, because we're not only interested in where the patient can hear the tones, but we want to know what they can understand, because ultimately we're focused on speech understanding. And then through all these tests, basically we put everything together, and that comes with our diagnosis and ultimately our ability to treat that patient and to help them. Because bottom line, we want to improve that patient's ability to communicate and improve their quality of life.
Is aging a factor?
You know, as you grow older, there's several things of your senses that can become more diminished. But yes, hearing loss due to older age is called presbycusis, and it definitely can be a factor. There's about 50 million Americans who experience hearing loss, and obviously the prevalence goes up the older that you get.
Can medications cause hearing loss?
Well, definitely certain medications can cause hearing loss. We refer to this as ototoxicity. Okay, certain powerful antibiotics like gentamicin, other things like cancer treatment drugs, chemotherapy agents can cause hearing loss. But a lot of people don't understand something as small as ibuprofen can have a certain level of ototoxicity. Usually when you're talking about hearing loss, you're not just talking about one factor that has caused that hearing loss. It's usually a multitude. Noise exposure combined with older age, combined with some level of ototoxicity. It's a combination effect.
How good is current hearing aid technology?
You know, we're in the digital age of technology right now. Basically, and this can be intimidating for some patients, but you're wearing computers in your ears, okay? The great thing about that, though, is that they automatically make many adjustments. So the patient doesn't have to reach up and, I'm going to a restaurant, so I need to push a button. I'm going to the theater, I need to push another button. Hearing aids these days will sample your listening environment every 6 milliseconds and make automatic changes based upon the environment that you're in. There's some other exciting things with connectivity to the cell phones, the ability to adjust them up and down with the cell phone. We have invisible hearing aids for people who are cosmetically conscious, which there's nothing wrong with, you know. But there's really a hearing device to help every situation and, importantly, to every budget.
What does the future hold?
In your inner ear, you have little hair follicles, okay, that connect to the nerves that send the information to the brain. When those hair cells get damaged, they're gone. They cannot be regenerated. There's research being done at Washington University and other places where they're trying to find a way to regenerate those hair cells. Birds have this ability. There's other animals out there that have this ability, so they're taking a look at that. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. You know, I definitely think there's some hope on the horizon. But again, the great news right now is we have a really amazing treatment options for the patients who do have trouble with their hearing.
For more information on hearing loss, go to these websites. Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes, and send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.